Tonight, Ukraine is reporting new Russian shelling in a region that's reeling from a life-threatening flood disaster. This comes as a Ukrainian commander is claiming new progress against Moscow's forces on a separate front. CNN's senior international correspondent Sam Kiley is joining us live from Kyiv right now. Sam, what more do we know about these Ukrainian advances in the eastern part of the country and how that potentially fits in with the strategy for a wider Ukrainian military counteroffensive against the Russians?
Well, this latest advance from the Ukrainians, which extends to about 3+ kilometers, about 2 miles, is significant. It's to the south of the city of Bakhmut. It's retaking a channel, a sort of drainage channel area, and it's been conducted by the 3rd Assault Brigade of the Ukrainian Armed Forces. You'll recall, Wolf, about 2 weeks ago, they were successfully part of that southern thrust to try to flank the city that had fallen to the Wagner mercenaries. But this, Wolf, is part of an ongoing battle, not really necessarily directly connected to the wider counteroffensive that I think we're seeing the shaping or early stages of. There have been a significant number of probing attacks at sort of company level, strength from the Ukrainians, trying to punch through, feeling for weaknesses along the front line from Zaporizhia towards the Russian-held city of Donetsk. There's very strong Russian defensive there. The Ukrainians know that. I think they're clearly feeling their way there. And of course, we've seen the destabilizing campaign using Russian militants to attack and raid inside Russia itself across the border, the northern border between Ukraine and Russia. This all combined with the drone attacks, the long-range artillery attacks and missile attacks against Russian logistics hubs, particularly in Russian-held areas of Ukraine, but also beyond that into Russia itself, I think all add up to the early stages of this counteroffensive, which the government here says won't necessarily start with a fanfare, Wolf.
Sam Kiley, as I always say to you, stay safe over there. Thank you very much. Joining us now from the White House, the National Security Council Coordinator for Strategic Communications, John Kirby. John, thanks very much for joining us. I know you're very busy on this day. President Zelensky, as you know, has said he's shocked by the slow international response to this devastating flooding that's now going on. What more can the United States do to help?
We are helping quite a bit. In fact, within hours of the breach of the dam, Wolf, we were working with our USAID, our humanitarian partners on the ground, to get buses available so that people could move. Thousands of them were left homeless and without power and water. We were able to get water purification equipment on the ground, as well as boats and other rescue gear. So we have been at this really since just a couple of hours after the breach, and we're going to stay committed to that. We've got good eyes on and good partners on the ground there, and so we're going to keep doing that. There will be more support coming from the United States as needed.
As you know, video now shows Ukrainian rescuers are facing shelling. Would it be plausible for Ukraine and Russia to establish a military exclusion zone, as it's called?
It is incorrigible, these reports. Now, I'm not in a position to confirm them, but if true, just absolutely incorrigible that rescuers or people trying to be rescued would come under fire from Russian forces from whatever firing positions across the river that they're using. This is a life and death situation here, and it's a situation caused by this devastating flood that we want to make sure we get humanitarian assistance in there. So I can't speak to whether a zone can be created, but what I can say is that the United States condemns any violence being perpetrated against people that are either trying to rescue their neighbors and friends and family, or people who are seeking rescue. Absolutely unacceptable.
Yeah, absolutely indeed. Ukraine, as you know, is advancing around Bakhmut, but sources tell CNN Ukraine has suffered heavy losses of troops and U.S.-supplied equipment, at least in recent days. Are setbacks right now to be expected?
I don't want to get into specifics in terms of casualties or military operations, Wolf. That's really for the Ukrainians to speak to. This is war, though, and, you know, there is, as Sam rightly just reported, there is some heavy fighting around Bakhmut, and there's fighting elsewhere along that front that arches all the way from the Donbass down towards Zaporizhia. And certainly it's to be expected that there could be casualties in this increased fighting. What we're going to be focused on is making sure that if and when and how President Zelensky wants to fight along that line or any other line, that he's got the support he needs, not just from the United States, but from 50 other partners. And you saw Prime Minister Sunak here at the White House meeting with President Biden. They both spent a lot of time talking today about Ukraine and what we can do to continue to make sure that they're ready for the weeks and months ahead.
Yeah, that support is so impressive. As you know, President Biden also today vowed U.S. support to Ukraine will continue. But as you know, the House Foreign Affairs Committee chairman acknowledged it will be, in his words, extremely difficult to pass supplemental funding if Ukraine isn't making gains out there on the battlefield. Is he right?
Well, look, we've had terrific support from both chambers of Congress and both parties over the last 15 months. And the president has said he expects that support will continue because members of Congress, they understand what's at stake here, certainly inside Ukraine, but also on the European continent. So we're not at a point now, Wolf, where we feel like we've got to go back for supplemental funding. We've got enough funds to get us through this fiscal year, and we're going to keep at it. And you're going to see in coming days additional support coming from the United States alone for Ukraine and their battlefield needs. If and when we get to the point where we feel like we got to go back to Congress, then we'll have that conversation, but we're just not there yet.
John Kirby, thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure.